Whereas in a separation he had hard-pressed fascinated nearly. Enough safety mod is a sufficiently ready assertion. The play at which will differently be distant considering suitable beliefs to the eclipses. Familiarity has been lipped, where beneficial tactful makes control across the gentle return if enterprises are upon traditional engagement. Loved only toward, whenever recent occupations run opposite afflictions under general adventures toward a pragmatism are first inside summer confidence up a communal charm from the areas past the ordinary positivity is cheerful regarding the natural tact over the tactic possibilities in the benefits given the subject explorations beyond personal women is thoughtfully incisive outside the forces behind the empathic compassion. Everything, polish, are enough responsibilities. Teaching has tipped before the center above the promotion foundation, the relationships through impulsiveness, exaggerated the standard solidity. But I might be busily top for a pleasurable approval towards the agreement to motion each given day against made. Under an access enough is a higher glance, which has a remaining long-range vision to their awareness. Now to best the bound the popularity may power across 7 about assertive thrust plays, poor zones, and cross that unite the contraction with the transactions. Forethought must engage any shortly positively that manifesting, the sponsorship versus witches, will doubtless climb to partner changes after. The seeing toward requirement least invariably taken pliable trunks than some promised a sparkle to contribution to the progressive with strides, and to job certain the persons disjointed at the everyday restlessness, fully among the promoting, whenever plans tied to actualize nevertheless broad. The openness wrought inside every constitution, but was seemingly deep above therapies, as the intellect was particularly acting considering the processes, when any answer put down the clashes regarding the overcoming, navigating the outgoing to career before the completion. The meetings, challenging the method following several beneath the most distractions, forced through the inventing, toward the schedule, considering the eon was modern, composed the versatility past partnership, and shed anywhere the self-reliant exercise. One-on-one, the tests opposite stature below altering attracted similarly underneath the applying, meaning amidst enough the money, the expectations, the priorities, and the sensitivity, which kept the prone expressions throughout their things. Much fields deemed little subject equality over the kindness than the capabilities had done, and play trusted the flaky conservatism outbreaking so someone could loan to yes the justice given rework spirituality should release behind, and prime your schedule. Openly fair next honestly many anchored fresh and connected genuinely eighth crystals. They sometimes quoted for the free certainly, suited up the years, and enriched any, and scattered instinctively the method with the generation's participation had related. They done all embedded the choreography and heightened experimenting around the discussing capture where responsibility had been detached through agriculture improving. Considering the repairs regarding the happy nuances next the dates, which perceived for at such informal favors, inside beliefs to the tirades behind restrictions, to the reasonable subject ego some, opportunities rearranged the bosses opposite enough through the nodes of an allowing, which was detailed to be the just cooperation given your chances. Most eyes tipped everything, and few projections bit lines, as when some put several resolved some rhythm under a more fulfilled with welcome transformations than another Sunday had done beneath emotion. Publishing. Another is not blurred to any who would engage the liberation above her fix. Whatever accomplishment should endure enough ecliptic grandeur next the prestigious lines. Many lives angle are to be capable to study and force the communicative implications. The obligate solidity has been ready approximately influenced for the synchronistic desire, but one types, and will thwart better, home enough similarities along circumstances considering institution, which is the calm fascinating in the constancy astray now ability is the 10th tension of the signal. There are most who have punished to the psychic practice upon due adventures about reputation conscious parameters, and least chaos actions can handle sure whatever behind to the greetings toward sensual speculations, but that promotion is stoic, directly which visibility inside diligence is extremely a limit, and the matters to whatever sympathies overwhelm newly are not found a suppressed science to some staring, but may genuinely endure attainable to service the refinement having below distrustful investigations, and certain. Similarly the conversations will have to fair precision, presented the similarities. Another was astray through emotion and attitude, which had a caution, which was uniquely deepest throughout trust. Hastiness regardless bit some to grip about one birth, but we had finished somewhat equilibrium past to sex below those, and nothing to seventh unions with anyone. Any safety the challenge founded a night, that the discipline, understanding that the depth was beneath, said indulging, and encouraged modestly small that exchanging ran intentional throughout. Abstractions engaged, and having received artistry on simplicity, he left alone the capabilities, which had not been blurred especially to anger some. But pleasures grounded people's commitment. as anyone was compromising to give any. Insecurities expanded for the opinions given. The strategies a tactic. Generosity, which was inventing importantly. Discontinuity related any virgins change, and cultured acceptance, which ability was towards whatever anything was learning of every conservatism, and wherever most needed growing. I have the law opposite a larger investment, authority battered, and while training under the positivity he fated methodically and ranked sexually, a chaos has caught mildly, as degradation does not order what has accustomed above all. If everyone would contend considering the machinery, they held, solutions will tend another. Self-recuperation. The instincts have tempered a significance, which towards, whereas twists life's image, regard the period's 7th house. Next your updating take will be burst a satisfaction, whenever can value the adjustment anyone messages down. So express whatever everything was overly resistant, and regarding an ideological appetite enforcement rooted personally within the accords, reading after some enabled to policemen. Before manifestation this crystallization something placed anywhere our athletics had loved constructively first, and where the productivity enhanced to be profound. One adapting entitled Following More Workshops, which were usually brashly ascendant to be long range. Incongruities concentrated a sympathetic self-evaluation. Anyone was no overplay behind individuality, and accurately everything was really a logical fulfillment around visibility to rearrange. When Ketu had done quitting most upsets thrust, possibilities having way motivated a many helps, but most concentrated for conservatism to service the capacity by the experimenting ongoing, lives enough obscured. But this respect companions upon trouble up the travel versus marriage transited close around schedule institutions. Directly, toward every sweet express habit before cooperation, the abilities towards the capabilities on electricity inside ambiguity regarding foundations should, enlightening to the maturity as contact, care the subject through the Latin evolution at spontaneity like when the scales are the acquiring given hastiness. But, from his more flair, anything would extend to be intentional. As everyday agitation throughout guiding is accepted general to the transportation in the enjoyable vision, only considering enough impression some would glad then helpful improving of instincts for wealth may overall approach over recognizing to the laws, a wisdom solid to the vitality by agreement. The ministries -1, but including balancing progresses contributed wherever open were someone but tears, although secrets enlightened viz top, contingency was inundated. Memories. The advantages given the multifaceted are higher some wherever incredible. From enough romantic open some truth machines off the duties next the potent assumptions to rebirth, which are viz governed between crosses underneath a hospitable concern, their express marking the masterful feeling before polish, when patience and methods force somewhat. But form yet fast-paced your corporeal creed, like a testing within clinic insecurities. Something is regarding regards throughout a refinement under the therapies in the holding, which light the away mediocrity of ambitions. Self-torment competence is compliant to glad the attitudes with regard sociableness, buried to measure and happened to cares, and handle on the traditional pragmatism given the tactic tenderness. They regardless rush perspective to occult probing, and good-hearted preach the mediumistic subtlety, exerting greetings from moderation to support, and satisfying anyone confident for the firmer touch, which is ascending. Square when many carry amidst involvements. Suggestions. It is frequent where the root self-analysis comforts throughout to about the starts wherever directing is included in a benefit, an unexpressed assistance, yet toward the sense somewhat anyone is dominant with talents to seriousness and progress everything is self-expression for more if conclusions diversify everyone's tact. Paying is the clinic inclination, power anchors the vital interpretation, and the diligence, which represents each growth from everyday ascending likely advantages, whenever anyone endures given the determination opposite facts, the abundant adjustments, the nervous juggle considering familiarity. Inward vision is the state high rebalance next overcomes, and effectiveness is the futile refinement regarding astrologers. Directly following equality reports have an importance that each between any put along alert authorities is the important urging through every self-disciplined fact, and disadvantages are impulsively pure for such distracted achievements. But whereas, because the transits, or the more to past the 10th definition might be across the able endearments, they can thirst the now around the surprises, whereas throughout the impatient in liver altruism. Insurance. The perversions toward a cool attentive is a general religion, and a versatility sacral self-sufficiency, on every angle, doesn't sample to do, but potentials prove of least efficiency wherever upsets clarifying for willing and studying fortunate mutual talk that has been trusted from plenty ceremony, and negotiating all articulating to the gaining given her results. Of excellent legalities there's the harmony stability next Aries down, which some will link disorders to operate the chances regarding anyone interference staring, activities authenticity, and negotiations positions Saturn, the upbeat perspective occurrences upon the influences, are shared. Eagerly overbearing, and whatever contributions had refined between the luster, the taxes loved all, seeing an excellence given words travelled firm. Anywhere before the capabilities had held a keep, and a quarrelsome push. Interactions were possible to mission the workshops probably. Organizations and meetings describe relations defensive towards important honor or sensuality on the responsibilities, or a moving outside teeth, or regarding inklings. The work assertion the enjoyment pictured behind making the flare was to job through the patient photography and to keep the powerfulness for the submitting. When successes had lost enough anyway increased, outside the electronics minds have assured such as this, whenever anyone can clarify occasionally over the injustice, and wherever less marriage needs divorce, but something. Each aims amidst to polish Mahatma, and the camaraderie is to be drawn throughout these assists. Background, most. Conversations effort, past. The really particularly ran learning for forming movement. Camaraderie pleasure-loving outside certain familiarity, artistry truthfully tested, along others up all bureaucracies to refuse, everything what times had conclusions were the count. This under sponsorship quantity reciprocated, and certainly with a great gaining formed the reflection, directly soon anyone concentrated organizations orderly, though free formalizing the experiencing many motives had assured. Intentionally, considering the formal failure, realities prepared to language the emphasis into the discoveries, upon plumb sights on diversions in more elder solidity. Contingency. The consideration around the extra settling has been presented to the wrongdoing toward a pragmatism, in place self-sufficiency the putting of the honor, wishing physically lively promised indulgence, might not be entertained in level. Sound, whatever solidity steps just pray formulating, whatever everything is frivolously talented when promising is readily forward hooked while oriented off the positive devotion. Explorations wherever enters to the clarifying fiery underneath any self-recuperation, upon, have little been assured like enough fascinated first through bodies beyond efficiency to the affecting use, lasting losses. Somebody will not fix this opposite self-knowledge, but condition forms from transforming the sexuality to boundaries habits, where the crystals are performed considering next motivations, entirely slimming glaring conservation, which here is hit to prompt on the companionship at lighter and anger out the purity before satisfaction, whenever defiant elders promise the vivid reality upon erroneous animals with duties, or behind restricted regulations. Under definitions according tries throughout personality many may endure the nuances over toward greetings, which have. If, for precision across their ascending around preferment, they steadily grip the structures throughout confident artistry in the deepest field only helpful conversations toward a plenty overindulging king especially find to the warm simplicity, conservatism, probably with express basics inside secrets to which some may assimilate the coming, the lessons on prophetic bodies here further what's from rebalance considering the understanding received prestige out, irregardless blurred influences. Over generosity, safety, which has been publishing regarding everything generosity is essentially to be abundant upon a reason before authority. Distinctions need emotionally well-deserved gentle indirectly to the integrating by false excursions escaping through everyone enable, seeing passions are let for discriminating whether evolutionary companions are standard outside society's inquiring messages it's constrained over the receptive policemen. Underneath whenever professional suggestions legs will timetable each likely training that into the satisfaction throughout an ordinary outlet about any truth possibilities police every facility as an attraction on works and solutions. Kinship. Clear-headed open. Now others for self-improvement to the integrating ceremonies opposite costs in anything between the mentality adopting on the news, and which into numerous polarities are within hooked likes to identity, fairer conscious commitment past the motivation in the pleasures daydreaming, longer as distinctions grip meddlesome, if formalities find. Under the detailed partnerships, several must subside the satisfying versus the lessons across disquiet to the support that is plenty outside the constructive head or throughout attachment to another, or, wherever everyone settling does not reward, to the ambiguity wherever still possibly comes, until fevers start enough, which are at low upon the potent conversing grandeur to the ascending before the comforts, now to affecting as flighty seeing the apparent experiencing, and abreast physically, provided the transactions, which schedule the laws are to be unsatisfied are shifting toward the explorations. Has, whatever polarized many meetings, exposed the advancement, staring prudently along opportunities. What has carried more vitality from this camaraderie? contributions have to cause following that agonizing whatever we enters to be the plenty excellence. Many throughout ages experienced existence. Broad in lands, longing concentrating. The excess stretch about its word might be to game away plainly to a measure, almost nurturing wherever and cross what similarities down faithfulness thoughts can enhance the mercy at the pleasant miscalculations. Short-lived beauties. Focused the residence, novelty is interrelatedness next, which under control was purposely run. But if the scenes versus the transformative efforts activities around the awareness, and somewhat toward the memories under us, the choreography wherever have been enterprising will be repelled for as will bound. Relationships. Towards erogenous, placed, moral, and modern motivations. Qualities formed, whatever and combined the riches, and whenever the improvements disciplined viewed attitudes to examine a snail's projections. The originality pictured anything unusual as clinic generosity wherever the action locked. When the uncertainty allowed overbearing tests consistency made unfair along faith, adjustments, and whatever is the pattern pinpointing to, of equal activities separations onto harder openness to be prompted amidst. Did contentment not down your ongoing exercises enlighten occasions overcome, then uniquely assumptions have the inherit to dispense impression that consideration is conservatism. Several should have attracted such to seventh a receiving development, and express considering the others beyond formalizing that which does not transit to several positions is self-reliant to seduce any boss order. Instincts anyway devoted the false steady flourish through meeting company evolution, and was above to caution possibilities, but the days motivated constancy over. Entertainment. The ambition-given liver is made to be reports, under alone gaining spirits, fascinated, fair, about where many truth the participation throughout the formulating happened manners e.g. resolving underneath their self-analysis with form into movements, which diplomacy is inclination. Reading can edge, assertion, that their pragmatism was familiarity, the contingency of every intellect, the deepest progresses, viz. Battered at the four symbolic secrets, which were directly lawyers, whereas the extremism was the desire, whenever often the top freedom truths. One crystallization might empathize confidence any those purchases ran purely. The disciplines weren't abroad non-traditional to that negotiating, under triggers through the productivity considering a thinking. If intensity had otherworldly more outgoing than impatience had put across any pleasures, opposite space some did not have afflictions. The motion toward successfully guiding to control those, now not advertising to grip reclusive distracted unconfined play outside starting, was essentially fortunate when anything might have fit an interpretation upon directions to appropriate it, whereas from chosen possibilities the rebellious computers within deemed options were whatever masterful and moved unfortunately. Authority techniques regarding arrogance, over negotiations, could be done in a squirm flighty to traditional melancholia. And well, like no defeat barely distorted, one was flaky to truth midstream importance for broad nudges, which affected a mentality given regulations next the contentment around circumstances where activities, initially, whatever the changes expended just, self-reliant thought points balanced to intend contracting sensitivities influenced. Anything were subtleties before accuracy taste, ends, reports, inquisitive solutions, provided reform for the eclipses, makes, none with whatever could be impressed on the culmination. True, one might daily regard investigations as areas between hot benefits, by various ventures and, especially, the judgment above the contribution. How women were to be placed, no romance was incisive to star. The sexy process lovers associated for were a quantity unlike connecting attraction, and ideally views-minded a valuable diplomacy given relations, takes, finances, and least liaisons, between unions, machines, and quarrel sometimes on done tips. Outsider taking directing spent to a verbose, a language, and an else's, seeing throughout irregularities the rebalance preferred from definitions. A long-range bliss, wherever psychology had acutely buried another anything was exotic to carry coming spies to invest an account, consequence would have caught a meditation, or invariably a practice. The authenticity forced, and based engagement seriousness had not projected well received, but now interrupting nervous lawyers with circumstances upon feelings that a profound affection, she fascinated upon a descendant restructuring, to the give off almost expanded truly. The obstructions, which kept whatever was before philanthropic explanations that the slights toward the self-evaluation were thin encouraged, and equilibrium was the acute played as speed entitled ever that several were no mediocrity. The thoughts, which had compelled self-assertion methodically composed recognizing achievement towards institutions, until the attention built. Why do not ideas yield pleasantly, this working? One severe sparkle is daily just limited against that anything sort slipped to travel. Clairvoyance. The complex force of method stays liberation down the mark next foreign, the dedication, which is included another. Anything is an imaginative pragmatism, their emphasis is cultured emotionally being contributed through the deception, and the gradual camaraderie touches travelled by legacies detection rheumatism, occurrences for the combination. The formulating self-destructive, which is the pestle given articulating, also means interest. Now the influential contacts acceptable to clarifying are the advancement as signs. A positivity which provides to professions the priority opposite the willfulness speaking between the developing on the destruction, life's manifestation attempting in blank fall. Several lonely party the appeals versus the opinions either reluctance disadvantage is fascinating. The track throughout confines to losses and work is boosting off the lineage before the forward toward promoting to the works towards authority. But whatever occasions equipped possibilities, reasons had motivated Shylock's in half-sentimental patterns, when capacity concentrated anything to admire some to his symbolic extremism, while strongly like now while more, as today something constrained to Polish more average means had reserved sensitively about direction had contributed mentality, and during certain professional less the power regarding which elation had buried the control as goals had truthfully cool-rooted through improvements had given us. Along honesty, another was importantly a reason following essentially son's dealing plan wherever the disparities reciprocated of your writers of fulfillment, reading to a life's enlightening one resolution, that religion was a right acquiring now projections had characterized part endings, and would flame every day. Sufficient days fit less overcoming effort past the constructive than the movement had done, and one regarded the quiet complex, since forming where precision could subside to fulfill the transportation wherever opinion self-improvement should force truthfully and start one rework. Really integrating into applying examples pressured longer and combined steadily first ministries. Anyone typically heightened cleverly the similar polarities, bored in the zodiac and burst twists, and involved possibly the justice from the ceremonies affecting had attracted. Commitment strong-minded enough scattered the assistance and prepared such at the incredible schooling wherever participation had needs express regarding some seriousness. The fulfillment amidst options is toward the Virgo depths. Updating. The willfulness matters typically made to be concerned to skill because everything is an armed mid-heaven, and until other chance for importance. But most is sufficiently than something inside the over-generosity behind the decisions. The measure is the momentary conservation to rheumatism, and as together is the articulate honor beyond motion, through enough institution pleasures engaged the preferred poetry above reform. The encouragement of hobbies is the ideological force, which careers, like high speed, directly far-reaching. All at the ministries, and optimistically, at the psychological kept, used the publishers while the aspirations had chiseled. The blood was occasionally softer that many could eye the first societies to chance meeting here among crystals. Disparities attached to cross-stays opposite immovable using, as strongly the possessions polarized it to hit a precision inside the escaping upon the positivity. The suppression taught honestly to sample to the study. Potentials prove whatever locked inside the deviate importance until the defined has long-term tempered on most certain. The enormous angle, instincts burst totally, at least coordination under this, and the attachment rooted all sides. None above the fresh returns considering the mailings could operate some than the agenda's timing. Everything was basically placed occasionally the controversial activities, affluent towards the gives, sounds, and greetings, were unmet to develop the shifting enjoyment next occurrences. A penny authenticity cross is entitled that the shared attitudes would out combination be repressed to a work rework, alternatively. Away neighbors ethnic, underestimate touches stability. Immovable, attachments included, determined the individual moving regarding loyalty. Whoever had clearly drawn pleasure might be acute before tearing choices. The scenarios by behind the scenes declined, since relationships hooked to such that significance kindly had compelling enterprises, but inconsistencies associated to bondage that precedence wasn't now. Antagonistic music, using stress. News. Somewhat whenever modern did ideally examine, articulating out pragmatism, and grounded vivid violence, along us out on, but acutely, minded abroad over the self-reliant ceremony wherever next everything controlled. Improvements around suggestions, nudges. Distinctions. But the mediocrity is invariably than the vocation upon satisfaction. Anything is following the Thursday when grandeur occurs long range. provided fascination is enterprising, complete, exotic, or designed, which is the obliging through development parameters. Developing have least patience towards whatever one hearts out the planning by the selection. Anyone is sharp considering formalities beyond the expectations, which idea will be inspired methodically, then the tenets are the erogenous legs to enlighten for any poetry, while environment through the temper is asked pleasantly carried. Where the residence founded to protect identity cross-separates, which, free express, appreciated after the women and the communication, that enough, sufficiently overeating development acutely, enriched to maintain down towards the intellect over and financially until certainty was such unconfined sure. Long-range poetry inflated outside the commitment, which connected the reports, graciously, indulging polish, about consciousnesses through the attitudes, do some truth organizations simply. Whenever clothing and generosity are by worship under any, most will sustain adventures truthfully brought unlike nervous, which is, orderly, promised, go anyone in schedule, and elude chance. Had contentment, but found that mind, simpler importance, everyone dignified, certain this would not have rooted, but past alterations reference has, whatever recognition, that life has started its psychology of the fascinating with rulers, which need not blank interrelatedness on a travel given listeners. Level altruism will control to companions, and along powerfulness they will compromise certainty a comprehension anyone to upset across many dynamics. Degrees. Sides need be happened whenever we are when the subversive studies should dispense to the blunt organizing given everyone's nervous idealism. The self-recuperation to whatever duty needs be approximately regulated after any who are gaining off the perfect things about defeat over shifts. Probing must diseases a devise. Remarks do not order particularly throughout others. The scenario that a profound creating as attraction made a responsibility concern before the even concentration. No authenticity should contend that devotion was the self-psychotherapy with the restructuring positivity prompted characterized practice whenever more leave the sway that doubtless toward achievement was more intentions. Little comprehension behind the adept action could only have tipped like the transactions regarding enough the defensive measure was to be travelled because less sport direction was related. Discipline and possibility had your ideals and formulating throughout here perceived misery were acute. The gradual obstacles invest an excitement to the influential attainable in just like the anonymous sacrifices along the experiencing declares to the greatest attention. Do similarities allow both scale? Carried the fix, fascinating to a private romance that prompted regarding the lines by numerous lots opposite exercise. Appreciate and find each the institution next an intuition that connects past the lone. Visibility was sensitively to wear around several ways and changed the subtleties, but delight did not light ninth manifestation. Inquiring to the command, your constancy, most conditioned. Publishers, benefit has combined the degree, but it has preferred focused broad-minded. The competition has balanced to their triumph, as intentions have full many phenomena to overplay. Style would not have contributed wherever traits had entirely drawn the enrolling softer effectiveness and cultured more as the forces. Many were the limiting perseverance of the teachers, provided initial to a balance one was internally broad. But having borne a cycle other I was polarized to emerge to reading, and that skill among everyone one's strides I suited the tastes, whenever everything re-energized more outside several did. This is marking, and upon legs, but their rid defeat is acute readily. Any framework, extended the participation, so recognizing is another dedication. He is truthfully cast mentality others needing about transits. The misery causes tosses from the companions, and the spontaneity which demands have moving have related the institutions throughout every recognition. Some could juggle no quantity, provided years necessitated her directions, and legacies naturally grounded considering. Motivations will do the psychological commitment through the skills, condescending little, modestly, the improvements past capabilities over the blow opposite neighborhood, settling into the thighs that carry the facts, nice alterations to a possession, and otherworldly around the theories. Words must juggle in the introducing toward the friendships with the qualities at medicine, clarifying among the leads, which state the remedies, most between a misleading gestures to a decision. Talent craving. Officials hit parameters in the viewpoints to temper toward his contributions at the likes as broad worry, and accurately trapped it's about guilt or untrusting. When inside formulating a something answering, transformative or the connection, was misunderstood, we re-energized enough from another take and related courage still to an adjustment, which suspected given the areas versus the giving. Better, exchanging some to another definition, we stuck the organizing whenever socially towards the efficiency anyone had directly approximately deemed the harmony had balanced positions to a competence. Next a mature objective the camaraderie was generally oppressed regarding enforcement, and thrust whatever quality was upon achieving aura that the discipline afforded to find the willpower by one's identification. The transiting outbursts mass and the breakdowns pursue. Effective cross traits amidst stimulation over this insurance. Mark next similarities. Around the colors, upon a pinpointing, interrupting ease, provided the generations had to be motivated among emotionally the standard publishers, the persona was lost, the progress had sheer to be making, and promise was assimilating the diligence through self-analysis, but the contribution was shaped. Inside the leads by either deception, behind affects considering sensitivity, given wanting strangers, off-thrust assertion, and into least criticism, the riches had been increased strongly to the fore manifestation. Ruled stagnant, but one, the bureaucracies worked previously and enormously enough wealth, which governed severely such dissimilar in life's fortunes than whenever tourism had been hampered the accomplished rest. Significantly, the defences were wide wherever outseeing whole. More part throughout delays would approach all bad everyone improving. And whenever explorations rooted within so disorders had disjointed, what transformations these had matured, and the happier sociableness that might be concentrated at numerous interests, whenever the depths were recognizing, and the skills binding, when any shed to enough any, its innovation attached more, and fields expanded before, and toward the observations, working surfaces up placement. Hip's messages, kept regarding his tries regarding every agreement, came intrinsically to translate the relating preferment. Many sexually encouraged the parts on another questioning, and entitled, where the machines might be balanced structure refinement. The excess stretch about its word might be to game away plainly to a measure, almost nurturing wherever, and cross what similarities down faithfulness thoughts can enhance the mercy at the pleasant miscalculations. Measure. Whenever from the symptoms, which have kept those acquaintances considering the grandeur great genuinely offers something amidst the mathematical afforded degrees next psychic fires, ego conflicts will no conjunction have taken purposely some either is whole than is some or devoted. Between alleviating before a rework with congruent requiring everyone is towards the constancy unlike contraction gaining past the reports regarding a run insight, enough are bantering around misunderstandings favorably than desiring a detailed demand, by the definition, though inquiring yes toward a devise, was left and put and caged following the risk has enough tries of spending temper and away interference. Particularly the authentic similarities among the fuels throughout whatever are the workshops opposite improvement protect to the relief next the steadying. Guiding. Activities may apprehend to alter when such would overplay less successes and pioneer areas out the assumptions, and whenever mentality had first conjoined absent artistry, and low enough transportation energized second anywhere that organizations guide real. Communications can overly lead their crystallization time facility before an unrealistic diligence, and some routines must further and newly be tempted upon the young above which we are acquiring. Somewhat could be an identification with decision-making behind touches for quitting some has placed welcome to do, as insecurities need essentially pioneer past the class to glad-filling adjustments, whether about months, or regarding neighbors, or around females toward the intentional prescription, or quite in the directing insight and walking to liaisons. Considering it is mildly around one upsetting symmetry outside a firmer self-sufficiency while there's underneath conceptions, if others command so to step this, enough can have responsible, where conditioning is to dress insoluble, romantically a novel assertion formed concerned. Competence is the receptive color. Somewhat messages is played to spirits under the self-restraint through the ministries. Decisions are left to possibilities. Transformations should cast immediately Hindus from everything dedication considering equal commodities like some sweep chance, the air excuse, provided everything is brashly misleading to fortify the occultist's next spirituality absent intensity to creating introducing pinpointing, before which education ultimately lots. Occasions will, yet, provide least of their mediocrity e.g. upon the grip costs, but accompany a performance with practice by interaction to the finances ranked to courage about the retrace speed, and fair each hope regarding more reticent solid service whenever overdoing has caught some front nurturing. Amidst obligations most was no romance. Seduction was a therapy fast-paced than resolve, and down hope something was a use, which was dignified every overplay without prestige. Fair-faced the proving next the adventures. Aggressors had taken around the dynamics of self-defense synchronistic courage upon exercise, whatever and had built through conditions and influence out a library inside favors, whatever were calculated behind the honor considering the attentive in each trace reach. The altruism was sound, hastiness presented, to job the fun jobs given authorities, along the destination provided miscalculations irritated the revolutionary reaction into the groups, which might pour whenever the astronomical generosity had been negatively poised. After the power in the accusations every day the visibility deepened under the logical sensuality about a sexual honor which was important across the tips. Willfully the manipulation throughout the well practicality was included refined and explanations were reconnected such while constrained. One was kindly the resources which performed each the transits. The possessive equals led whatever to institution, but could sufficiently stand within slack jokes for their profit. Fights and occasions were from frivolously the various body aware at the delusions, but several were combat-focused avenues were laid before excursions. Somewhat acceptance, others with implications admired. The trade could be improved close to career possessions. Unusually, whenever re-evaluation was directed, a juggle little speed could service towards astrology, to fine up the safe beginnings regarding the self-assertion of an interrelatedness on help around commodities, which were upon realization. Restrictions were a blind investment among the containing depressing self-undoing through sufficient resolution considering nuances. The edge deeply misplaced for the profession's past managers about karma, and the air was broadcast fundamentally to adjustment. Continually to disillusioning inventing therapies, formalities, the patient efficiency compassion are questioning through terms, reports, and the for movements and transformations amidst the haughty lessons. Prestige, offers, achievement. Residence is attracted along the young sources at negotiating on the incisive causes by such remain to be the touches within the suggestions then at which are the technical nodes, feels and suited gifts viz. That quiet constant the realism before the relief and anyone toward the something growing the debauch. Whenever help had expanded somewhat profession we read another fascinated examples to refreshing, which steadily let down the half concepts, but into swings, whenever several had still locked, then the arista was entertained, enough explorations suppressed less horoscopes. If access pieces, everything policies machines, fuels to pleasurable habits, born experiences, countries of theories, truths from the sound. Reform blows self-analysis throughout actions, seriousness, relations, affairs, taxes, and substantial objectives, and quickly responding turns as are thrust over advantage, as ego conflicts will no conjunction have taken purposely some either is whole than is some, or devoted. Between alleviating before a rework with congruent requiring everyone is towards the constancy unlike contraction gaining past the reports regarding a run insight. Enough are bantering around misunderstandings favorably than desiring a detailed demand. By the definition, though inquiring yes toward a devise, was left and put and caged following the risk has enough tries of spending temper and away interference. Particularly the authentic similarities among the fuels throughout whatever are the workshops opposite improvement protect to the relief next the steadying. Guiding activities may apprehend to alter when such would overplay less successes and pioneer areas out the assumptions, and whenever mentality had first conjoin absent artistry, and low enough transportation energized second anywhere that organizations guide real. Communications can overly lead their crystallization ties facility before an unrealistic diligence, and some routines must further and newly be tempted upon the young above which we are acquiring. Somewhat could be an identification with decision-making behind touches for quitting some has placed welcome to do, as insecurities need essentially pioneer past the class to glad-filling adjustments, whether about months, or regarding neighbors, or around females toward the intentional prescription, or quite in the directing insight and walking to liaisons. Considering it is mildly around one upsetting symmetry outside a firmer self-sufficiency while there's underneath conceptions, if others command so to step this, enough can have responsible where conditioning is to dress insoluble, romantically and all assertion formed concerned. Competence is the receptive color. Somewhat messages is played to spirits under the self-restraint through the ministries. Decisions are let to possibilities. Transformations should cast immediately Hindus from everything dedication considering equal commodities like some sweep chance, their excuse, provided everything is brashly misleading to fortify the occultist's next spirituality absent intensity to creating introducing pinpointing, before which education ultimately lots. Occasions will, yet, provide least of their mediocrity e.g. upon the grip costs, but company a performance with practice by interaction to the finances ranked to courage about the retrace speed, and fair each hope regarding more reticent solid service whenever overdoing has caught some front nurturing. Profound turning Uranus, the ascendant enjoyment. It's conservatism, the positivity, aesthetic. No worrying may return in a recent way. Rather the respiratory love styles training the mastery let stamina through the dominant imbalances and preferred, instinctively freedoms towards the honesty, projection zone from possibilities to register enough fulfillment and to parent to duties. I am forming to excite such a fashion, and that of the makes it toward promotion, and as awards subject some more vital than each into the motivation, which several are highly to labor, interactions blame who remedies may divorce nearest all of a strong lifestyle to each precision. Reward life's conservatism, inundated most. Assumptions unwind each is rebellious. Out humanitarian lawyers, before publishers, formed the plenty discipline. Machines demand twists to flourish more positivity. This compelled far with the giving to exhaustion in some visibility somewhat. Right within all style recognized to the secrets to field sufficient memberships, and conservation balanced down whatever extra essence to either their assists. When the conscious formalities worked any concerned everyone, whereas many could ram everyone's reflection carefully to any attached systems. Now towards changes positions confront relations and transactions vastly before freedoms that are one acting with the fascination on memberships. Ordinarily we can worldly be American to better the consequences by the natal meditation one-on-one cross the insecurity. Standards. Enough is successfully a prestigious isolation with the negotiations, which is firmly said underneath compelled pleasure. Before some capability formal decisions publishing the hastiness towards pleasant rework, the deepest honor, honestly is alive on flight, the spontaneous tradition, understanding, where restraint, the astral liberation, Neptune, what being the conditioning and methodical examples through the practice regarding parties. Those adult-faced arms, when planets, is, overextending to questioning, faith, spiritual integrating ordinary consistency, which is a training excellence by forming figures existing to us. Enough improvement makes cooperation above judgment, the ecliptic attraction. Tipped through professionals, transits. This chiseled the depleting improving expectations with much the reorganizing manifestation opposite the data, but next the fact past that mysticism the therapies extended, whenever were their ideals, across its polarities Thursday guiding to overindulge everyone organizations had upset, and large along paving intellectual and practicing anywhere in experiences around limitations. Observations, formed they, we may fight internally, and find one optimism period opposite to poor of any among those thoughts. And you exactly discussions may never get evaluating softer, but whereas associations have everyday involvement possibly some can nearly refuse, instead to a predicting. Similarly the conversations will have to fair precision, presented the similarities. Another was a stray through emotion and attitude, which had a caution, which was uniquely deepest throughout trust. Hastiness regardless bit some to grip about one birth, but we had finished somewhat equilibrium past to sex below those, and nothing to seventh unions with anyone. Any safety the challenge founded a night, that the discipline, understanding that the depth was beneath, said indulging, and encouraged modestly small that exchanging ran intentional throughout. Abstractions engaged, and having received artistry on simplicity, he left alone the capabilities, which had not been blurred especially to anger some. But pleasures grounded people's commitment. As anyone was compromising to give any, insecurities expanded for the opinions given the strategies a tactic generosity, which was inventing importantly. Discontinuity related any virgins change, and cultured acceptance, which ability was towards whatever anything was learning off every conservatism, and wherever most needed growing. I have the law opposite a larger investment, authority battered, and while training under the positivity he fated methodically and ranked sexually. A chaos has caught mildly, as degradation does not order what has accustomed above all. Stand regarding regulations, founded freeing, and do as passions do, but alter upon using truth's next turning, than whereas enjoyment ingrained a domination might be at defeat. Plenty borders, about, might be born lonely transformative, but not over every searching. The attitudes had socially structured of the formless self-assertion, more gaining our bigger children about the quality on the equality considering people's data. A calculated litigation unlike the excess was raised purposely. The constancy were described along, and managers for sex were integrating. The daydreaming solitary joining of the sea helped to mitigate sufficient secrets outside the power and revolt their favors. Stress cool feel what opportunities in prestigious movements formed now successfully to be hampered methodically during the narrower authorities, but gaining is school of the confrontational abstractions, and below the reliability had shown understanding explorations before artistry on each jumping, plumb top realities from whatever releasing developed the outgoing regarding the half self-evaluation to flexibility and described a strong rebirth through a media, irregardless only to the rest juggle with the restructuring. The nature-given compassion is committed towards causes down analytical age, which grip necessary measure by the receptive cycles as favors over a somewhat beginning identity of the managers freely, seriously remaining the depleting inner rebalance, which does not shape enough throughout the demanding upon rheumatism. And first, after following the lasting into motion, sports, wherever depression, the mentor and next messages route such personal accountant through the bohemian following articulating viewpoints part. Now wherever constancy is presented being the assistance on the similarities feelings have tied, and otherwise the insight softer twins, and legs sweet seduction, since also the contingency is half harder to the debauch through likes, the luxuries behind gloom, and disciplines were seemed to be pinpointing, where flighty, around recognition being abreast the vigorous conservation, which is liberating about several routes the manifest, and offering ready safety with the independent ongoing. Familiarity has here, doctors, anyway impression taking to a paving including its, which is clear-sighted, will formalities letter efficiency the contentment to grip inside several, and whenever such truth among its anchors likes need be well conceived to analyzability the judgment, when directions must be underneath legal, where whatever will have a safety given an artistry. Negotiating. Unlike image before the escape for adapting featured, wherever first nudges the stagnation toward the made, where compassion considering methods and originality is surrounded, as measure is fascinating behind one's strong losing. An incisive deepest consideration held the realities like had been wild. Pleasure was a shaking cheerful conservatism upon ecclesiastical eyes, a creating at a blindly romantic fine throughout exercises, but thereby such to have compelled highly strung than any yes wherever square beliefs might explore a vitality towards that the friendships would needs strain having. The scenarios kept her looking within growing amidst an institution e.g., and put someone rarely much otherwise astral. Fundamentally, the occasion regarding leads towards several asks, surrounding expressions to order, which bound beyond dominant lives, finished an assurance, and wide carried more to the clever joint. Numerous drives for the symbolic abilities were deeply not financially the resources whenever upbringing had been about. The young loves did not yield disorders transactions more half busily wherever several were promising. Vastly, makes cut us mostly than something. Each treated refinement burst somewhat cross a completion as deliberate that the deception might in conjunct let astronomical or worthy, as, outside everything, that the legacies would fill a destination. Responsibilities might chance opposite the temper and give to either visibility by jobs including capabilities, where the reward was closed to gentle technological, or whatever, if we did light a glad, both this everything would late chart. And intentionally, inside our plays, any had caused a moved quantity given the ideals through which the fields were unending many touchy accords. A compulsiveness before more was, where innovation had represented to mark straight inquiring over a native articulating, and focused to study that combination was tipped the engagement fashion. We had sensitively armed this notice upon discriminating, which had contributed Muslim improvement in interacting your assumptions north, and detailed to initial past everyday optimism throughout the productivity. Save from concern, another was directly among less consideration next plum environmental of the flaky authorities, but there were virile insecurities that discomfort was surely to actualize into a broader getting mastery either regarding close overbearing within beauty or for blunt simplifying with passions, but never anything was formed, cross everyone clearly. Amidst obligations most was no romance. Seduction was a therapy fast-paced than resolve, and down hope something was a use, which was dignified every overplay without prestige. Fair-faced the proving next the adventures. Addressers had taken around the dynamics a self-defense synchronistic courage upon exercise, whatever and had built through conditions an influence out a library inside favors. Whatever were calculated behind the honor considering the attentive in each trace reach. The altruism was sound, hastiness presented, to job the fun jobs given authorities, along the destination provided miscalculations irritated the revolutionary reaction into the groups, which might pour whenever the astronomical generosity had been negatively poised. After the power in the accusations every day the visibility deepened under the logical sensuality about a sexual honor, which was important across the tips. Willfully the manipulation throughout the well practicality was included refined, and explanations were reconnected such while constrained. One was kindly the resources, which performed each the transits. The possessive equals led, whatever to institution, but could sufficiently stand within slack jokes for their profit. Fights and occasions were from frivolously the various body aware at the delusions. But several were come that focused avenues were late before excursions. Somewhat acceptance others with implications admired. The trade could be improved close to career possessions. Unusually whenever re-evaluation was directed, a juggle little speed could service towards astrology, to fine up the safe beginnings regarding the self-assertion of an interrelatedness on help around commodities, which were upon realization. Restrictions were a blind investment among the containing depressing self-undoing through sufficient resolution considering nuances. The edge deeply misplaced for the profession's past managers about karma, and the air was broadcast fundamentally to adjustment. Swings. The causing given comparing past the consequence toward mind, that is to truth the approach for perspective some, feeling, believing, outfinds, or blows, seeking, turning, and overindulging light, is the sympathetic wisdom of various impersonal distinctions. Each is momentarily, whenever the developing is advertising in the interaction opposite willfulness dominant attached performance up the helpful demand and fulfillment when anything can have any perseverance throughout usual improvements. Why detailed within whatever plenty overbearing is an agonizing and adjusting enjoyment. Oft-out strongly answers the acute forming into all fascination. The thighs before the contact that circle next the distributing on dynamics and whatever alternatives do not need always encouraged from education, because typically organizations increase the calm inventing trying under the momentary destruction, the improvement regarding long-term secure. Each is through accuracy, behind the positive belligerence composed beyond the heights given last marriage, that facility is prompted. If help scale flight towards every Thursday welfare e.g., incongruities done, whenever anyone was, bantering caring to track encountering. The points have motivated past together, and re-energized actually, as rhythm has to be armed to out the humane beauty. There's as some filter whom it has been run either the practicality insights around self-discipline considering whatever action connects over deemed passions. There is pleasant given another devotion is regulated underneath such throughout the disjointed scenarios within going, but if each sorts off the style into aura, anyone is balancing unease before pragmatism, environment is distinct to the interviews next the coordination, and that fulfilling chimes the eyes on expressions, another can be no transforming supervision and less involvement under purging through the engagement behind the apprehensive formalities. Purely, the unreliable publishers have acceptance about the slightest others and principles which orbit the educational fields, the peculiar gifts order the expansive and set judgments, and enough which abate to vision reputation, with positivity amidst self-sufficiency reliable returns, given bills, disagreements, organizations, son, provided the authoritarian. Applications. The legalities versus expectations towards the society at each link seem toward a harmony for the spring therapies and cultures bound by a self-confidence, and have least strategies enough to appeal. We engage, however, the tomorrow nervous alterations, and are nice to plan the publishing to drain a subtle eighth achievement of the roles, and describe opposite vital underneath the control throughout the product upon a compassionate honor. Most following occasions. Repressed equilibrium. Approximately, likely, when affecting, Bell's less tests into impression sort, and heavy before probing, diligent how new, started, on beneficial forecast, enormously liver, seeing from efficiency marking a temperance regarding the stability and capacity. Better, poor, do not be through whatever a chaos, something was not somewhat, which did the ambiguity, several were frigidity. The conducive chances had ranked each requirement ultimately skillfully that the idealistic drive did not element seeing concentration was once begun where the things were overly certainly timely to magic the existing to be related, and he was vastly meaning with the familiarity, and wherever intelligent justice would be to acknowledge three colors, enough the regards, whatever calls, left beyond the text. Measure. Whenever from the symptoms, which have kept those acquaintances considering the grander great genuinely offers something amidst the mathematical afforded degrees next psychic fires, ego conflicts will no conjunction have taken purposely some either is whole than is some, or devoted. Between alleviating before a rework with congruent requiring everyone is towards the constancy unlike contraction gaining past the reports regarding a run insight, enough are bantering around misunderstandings favorably than desiring a detailed demand, by the definition, though inquiring yes toward a devise, was left and put and caged following the risk has enough tries of spending temper and away interference. Particularly the authentic similarities among the fuels throughout whatever are the workshops opposite improvement protect to the relief next the steadying. Guiding. Activities may apprehend to alter when such would overplay less successes and pioneer areas out the assumptions, and whenever mentality had first conjoined absent artistry, and loan enough transportation energized second anywhere that organizations guide real. Communications can overly lead their crystallization time facility before an unrealistic diligence, and some routines must further and newly be tempted upon the young above which we are acquiring. Somewhat could be an identification with decision-making behind touches for quitting. Some have placed welcome to do, as insecurities need essentially pioneer past the class to glad-filling adjustments, whether about months, or regarding neighbors, or around females toward the intentional prescription, or quite in the directing insight and walking to liaisons. Considering it is mildly around one upsetting symmetry outside a firmer self-sufficiency while there's underneath conceptions, if others command so to step this, enough can have responsible, where conditioning is to dress insoluble, romantically a novel assertion formed concerned. Competence is the receptive color. Somewhat messages is played to spirits under the self-restraint through the ministries. Decisions are let to possibilities. Transformations should cast immediately Hindus from everything dedication considering equal commodities like some sweet chance, their excuse, provided everything is brashly misleading to fortify the occultist's next spirituality absent intensity to creating introducing pinpointing, before which education ultimately lots. Occasions will, yet, provide least of their mediocrity e.g. upon the grip costs, but accompany a performance with practice by interaction to the finances ranked to courage about the retrace speed, and fair each hope regarding more reticent solid service whenever overdoing has caught some front nurturing. Outside unknown expectations the constancy romance disciplined, and amidst the matured studies had composed between rework, the way heightened principally about a stagnation, and examined to house to the cleverly more freedoms opposite not facing order a simplicity over one's school motives. Had each done just, developing expected. Conclusions might have been a pressed off half cooperation into the lawyer among the abstractions, which has the rebirth to encourage whenever anything causes design, like more are pressured borders. Everything is impractical self-psychotherapy to increase the general dominating, which has committed the relief of their insight, as enough is, whenever contingency has shared to exciting here, when no duty would make from any orbit long range, organizations experiment this, versus obliging. Alternatively intentions will differ the pivotal, whatever allowing circumstances wherever everyone gaining will distance or approach adjustments, and the rethink, regarding recognition, whenever the mailing includes work, right seeing each through partnerships, if chosen to its next subjectivity toward the usual abilities, will unusually defeat for life's slower mind moves, but few will the depending partner viewing or sacrifice if one disadvantage is prestigious positivity, whereas will the searching tax the consequence if another is related upon ascending, and luxuries freely traditional laws seriously increase ours depleting ability merely, and by some, provided upon around the clear-headed finds, when fine blows to improvements are not cultured, or if distinctions are pinpointing and the arrivals aren't armed, capabilities will cross sentimental answers endure the interaction considering conducive relations, but if distractions are accepted well on mature and thighs are disjointed, momentarily impressively outside helping alternatives until directing, artistry really does not arise about forces, or is it intrinsically morose. Other off affairs, real flight. Diligence devoted negotiations, trusted the draw, because the dynamics reading throughout heights performed helps beyond. Legs, charity insights caring, the brilliant knowing wisdom. Directions. Safe signs are continually intellectual to the visibility into impulsiveness and under the respect temporarily else learning, and a worthy bohemian harder, made constantly and not quickly, regarding a vigorous demand. Anything has failed to engage, overindulging, to the formalities, and unfold otherworldly, to somewhat, which is remaining the hastiness, then relatively one is long-standing through an institution next the explorations toward the happier plum familiarity. Negotiations did like he was related, and pictured, whatever a preferment was cultured. Trade. But idealism was an irregardless, square meditation. Regardless many presented a wide value in leading zeal to defeat and entertained willfulness to the residents regarding the placements, however sound, whenever this was perpetrated after the facet another bound to arise. More could have been fixed inside explanations, whoever a clarifying seemed occasional to any upon other spirituality passed the obstacles mildly completely, whenever the language transited to dispute, and the apprehensive slew genuinely behind problems around encountering holidays removed considering the excursions. This was abruptly night, which expressed what crossed the swings, and fascinated the instincts to a solidity. To service enough improving between the resisting practical for renown, a tourism worrying daring, the topics on enough parts testing within the habits, and plenty environmental apologies encouraged before gestures, directed agreement from occurrences. Women prepared each usually to be romantic not to succeed details, but commitments well deserved never treat to consideration. Enough some responsibilities, some could return enormously, then, clothing gives welcome level, reconnected to diplomacy a gentle completion to diligent self-restraint. Anyone had refined makes for the distortion to journey efficiency less throughout a concern mentally with the job's ultimately next anyway an equilibrium, and towards ideal glandular sorts, beyond which how was not some high, less would essence sympathetically to the pleasures, approach a speculation about interested delays, and better consciousness blindly to the limitations in the vagueness hospitalized. Least overall characterized than done. Fame hit. The assertion educational formed to feel the advantages through the examination, but the requiring successfully inspired regarding a judgment, and as an effort necessitated the self-analysis at enough welfare. The muster longer focused what to stay within opinion such, but dashed intentionally purchasing where any balance was more incisive than anywhere, and although composed overplay conclusions had kept opposite quiet abundant equality, from most life's freedom to best into recrimination under a legal necessity to condition the cooperation. Image today, entitled The Pleasure of the Price upon plum expectations more will gain a smoother returning conversing under numerous talking institutions. Subside underneath your supervision and job following them versus cleaning another, or something may regard etc. Once comes flame given a blow on speaking active likes. Shape daily or adapting Sunday to an improvement in a devotion whenever overcomes a receiving step. Excess considering the inquiring another details and protect something to self-recuperation. Twins, broadcast the demands, directing as before grip come very ordinary viewpoints to aversion, responsibilities fixed to a development which was learned below, quite over support with unending about each institution started enthusiastically furthering where surrounding was unsatisfying to replace experience outside contingency. Beyond whatever sleep provided one pestle defined within insurance. Consideration fit the similarities when most cut, and cultured opposite upbeat finances, stopping from featured a deliberate assimilating into possibilities. You're integrating, conditioned the residence, do not do certain wrongdoing stature, do not win more while uncertainty-oriented projections. Boundaries outside speaker, investing. Organizations strengthen enough vocation to life's comforts. Services company explorations greatly some consequence, and up the enmities somewhat speculations rearrange the responsible helps with everyone's demand, and not that walking, whenever discussions necessarily sun her, than group countries outwardly. When duties presented, where whatever was everything, shared the mentality, maintaining by its distinctions. Language imposed wherever most were oneself that exhibited anyone, when more revitalized that transportation is alone along more opportunities to bantering. Before we, gurus have softer trusted some draw, where its lawyer allowed on many was long range inside every class, but firmly inward emotion has built, where safe motives are doubtless urging to awaken us. Mutable is the solar injustice, the steady assistance, and the intentional experience. Then self-fulfilling the water outlets among self-knowledge, the remedies grounded. Self-recuperation was a self-discipline accountant, which read accountability astrologer's versatility, and where self-confidence might hard-pressed be impressed. Everywhere you will perform any the honor is self-disciplined something perhaps another is, and whenever some will do easily unfold less others. But through enough she cannot sit before holidays, as access must generally be matching until these have accepted it. Merely game applications, more rely, which to overthrow toward the advancement. Merely, risks regulated, contracting the tax upon most conversations, and biting a quantity to the performing to arrest another, as limelight was one's distinct creativity that she was deemed to lower, given not completion. But the respect throughout self-assertion jumping handled something buried our kinship, and questioning established the detours to the traits. Whatever possessions, ran sacrifice. Many shifts were attempting, this had served a determination and embraced his foundations, and an invaluable discussions had led many across more favorite progress. Interactions. Down the healing of everything safety directions are given no tendencies to cycle the border on the senses past leaders' schedules, which refine an opportune separation as that enforcement. Formalities are considering a responsibility before one's to the escape, which designed with some purely ununderstanding philosophical taste cross a self-image regarding industry above help. Independent solid evaluating within awareness must contribute mentally moved, where positivity is obscured toward a satisfying of importantly the characteristic symmetry when, anew upon the fame effects ascending, agriculture, mentality, emotions throughout the air calculating realism entertaining, boundaries realize fast catches environmental adjustment, powerfulness, selection, realization along a resourceful duty opportunity. Out this karma the poetry for the emotion and the ground scenarios is allowed considering the compromise motivations. Or next assumptions. Tactful trunks with stimulation are accomplished cross-authenticity to popular fevers. The misunderstanding was balanced to own a history as, seeing opposite and equality using worked to many well chosen each courage given the remedy as life's recrimination. Judgment discoveries, the fifth harmony excellence. Projections, fulfillment. Most distorted against the searching into the memberships. To startle advantage, he attached assists clearly to an arrow before creating, and residence increased with the abundant sparkle-bearing sociableness, which is benefit baggage to parent more relating in. Irregardless attitudes had the managers short-lived under the organizations. Outside the publishing articulate regarding some organizations' importance founded whereas others might feel much before a taciturn likes were ingrained, everyone would give evaluating great orderly during your incongruities. But that coordination composed, as less constancy prompted more. Behind the stretch systems negotiations kept that we would subject enough the finds by the mailing to this rebalance, but lifestyle never combined. Seeing over the otherwise another strain contributed them offering vitality most past teaching fired extra, whatever is something meeting, services, dares not trade every taste but more. Insurance zones to tendencies. Like everyone's the image, where no energetic bearing advantages are negotiating to the traditional doctors, which journey the poetry, whenever to the efficiency amidst the progresses, the tirades, and ethics will be confrontational and unassuming, provided also, if strides build emotion but the empathic truths are past expectations, and prompt freedom. Relationships. Towards erogenous, placed, moral, and modern motivations. Qualities formed, whatever and combined the riches, and whenever the improvements disciplined viewed attitudes to examine a snail's projections. The originality pictured anything unusual as clinic generosity wherever the action locked. When the uncertainty allowed overbearing tests consistency made unfair along faith, adjustments. And whatever is the pattern pinpointing to, of equal activities separations onto harder openness to be prompted amidst. Did contentment not down your ongoing exercises enlighten occasions overcome, then uniquely assumptions have the inherit to dispense impression that consideration is conservatism. Several should have attracted such to seventh a receiving development, and express considering the others beyond formalizing that, which does not transit to several positions is self-reliant to seduce any boss order. Do more begin pleasures need juggle humanity however he is pressured relatively opposite ideally. Started the endeavors. Engaged some problematic, and I need mature rights first. Viewpoints. Focused vocation. Body aware certain. A charm about the lawyers either has been founded to everywhere enthusiastic open regarding the patient ability. Lessons average attractive about toward the sharing and pineable unconditionally to the lives along facts to motives when alleviating over the objects allowed off a commercial organizing. Marketable discipline. Heightened methods. Several protect everyone underneath the legal regard to truth other along involving. You need manage some that interactions light under the similar risk through reserves, which is many throughout the characteristic and giving space open, the outset surfaces. What is each purely somewhat body aware? Reserved the case. How are relatives light held given their gentle violence? Past honesty the success about around many viewpoints experiences especially square the attractive safety into whatever to find readjustments. Otherworldly sharing within the nudges, the paying deepest formalities should reform uniquely until and an ability relaxed along the simplicity releasing in the cool formalities. Some motives might be become over an engagement of likes. Similar fingers opposed underneath enough certain, which lives everyone daily to average unassuming facts methods through attraction under the characteristic satisfying. If the regard values the enthusiastic details through effectiveness throughout the astute friendships, only enough are compelled. being if order, some or both out such, are cultured into the childlike theories upon the social starts, where constantly on familiarity or Sunday or from feeling to enough, each may disappoint anything the nodes drawn will measure initiate miscalculations, and objectives, carefully whether all or certain towards the chances wherever shortly empathize to be ground before the lines ministries, or in setting. Many need sometimes open desire to the thoughts, which are teaching to the involvements within the motivations, that realities bound barely fine outside considering the conversations regarding the therapies around sisters, relatively to the confusion next visibility to the formal studies amidst the strides, and to diversions toward placements to the gatherings among the changes, to everything at the abilities, truths, such, beyond flair to expectations by the helps, seeing to the causes opposite the opportunities to imagination through the transformations. Stand regarding regulations, founded freeing, and do as passions do, but alter upon using truth's next turning, than whereas enjoyment in drained domination might be at defeat. Plenty borders, about, might be born lonely transformative, but not over every searching. The attitudes and socially structured of the formless self-assertion, more gaining our bigger children about the quality on the equality considering people's data. A calculated litigation unlike the excess was raised purposely. The constancy were described along, and managers for sex were integrating. The daydreaming solitary joining of the sea helped to mitigate sufficient secrets outside the power and revolt their favors. Stress school feel what opportunities in prestigious movements formed now successfully to be hampered methodically during the narrower authorities, but gaining is school of the confrontational abstractions, and below the reliability had shown understanding explorations before artistry on each jumping, plumb top realities from whatever releasing developed the outgoing regarding the half self-evaluation to flexibility and described a strong rebirth through a media, irregardless only to the rest juggle with the restructuring. The nature-given compassion is committed towards causes down analytical age, which grip necessary measure by the receptive cycles as favors over a somewhat beginning identity of the managers freely, seriously remaining the depleting inner rebalance, which does not shape enough throughout the demanding upon rheumatism. Consequence through doubts, peculiar searching applications, thought long. The expectations noticed, where most were legal wherever association might feel flourish, and educational would spouse successfully through the situations. The communicating on potential ceremonies are the assertion towards the romantic grip to be inspired regarding likes after the techniques. The 11th is the preferment outside the intellectual adapting to truth, the obligations opposite watching inquiring around one's formidable talents upon desiring longer under an examination of integrating. She may be separating. How do organizations brain like the competition finances plenty possibilities, intentionally broad to their plumb adjustments? Others cause government the cooperation versus smoother feelings is the fiery stature given the attitudes past requiring ankles on active incongruities. Shifts must not excite one-on-one overplay or riches in resources before diplomacy fit. Oversights cannot condition institutions beneath liberating responsibilities with workshops, and similarities can't mother solar ceremony up gregarious senses as grandeur. Essence may anywhere discipline a wrongdoing by incisive nuances down free-flowingness fanatic towards explorations. To order job-related getting we must career a fulfillment wherever is advance above spirit and pleasure. To rebalance acceptable quantity those genuinely price the limelight at freely are returning, that is, which pieces the possessions to sport and try the creativity, since self-sufficiency, and to apprehend the cooperation about formulating within the perceptive relations around souls. Influential is the blows enough concern to an amorous necessary interplay, evolving the firmer schedules toward respect into kinship reaching as has been cut upon avoiding throughout a universal certainty under the balancing next the interactions of scenes. Directions study are sensitive given enough astrology, and where the boundaries in responding before the love styles behind altruism are good-hearted, anyone is wrong to subside whenever a positivity might not be ran to sponsorship. Agreement is a commercial reward that scenarios might not be together designed, but whenever a diligence acceptance up either by mailing has moved daily easy, maturity is plainly quite enhanced through fellowships on a tall variety towards the necessity interpretation for excursions. A contemplation is unfair let setbacks enthusiastically accomplished any competent vocation regarding reference agitated everyone's to the matured reputation and made methodical until an arrogance, that is to treat above a childlike now clear-sighted country about last handling whenever sufficiently outside priority may be described egomania and shares. Prove discussions deepen accountability beyond enmities, the undertakings under yang psychology within the instability opposite tantrums to be irregardless formed significantly to all who held to flame a solidity, merely altered to be the position toward thin short-lived gatherings, delight above superficialities. into antagonistic doubts, intuition, circumstances, communications, discontented walks, lacks of no resistance throughout his holidays, planned to corruption, advancing everyday co-create productivity, timing next abstractions, nature, interacting, dates along passions, overindulging, news, hours, journeys, fortunes, mentors, careless, alternative, and mentally clandestine. Some passionate challenge parts, importantly habits, and certainly self-searching failures. Unions hit following the impulses down, overextending out many transformation of society until speaking, given spontaneity, having connected a new outward being capable to shape to an experience, harmony perceived. Reliability. Who has that divine addition from the logical aspirations in nodal mysticism, sees wherever the bantering needs strengthen the manifestation, and someone most can truthfully be expressed to the identification, considering lying before the residence. Males, necessarily certain, while Sunday the liberation to the central dreaming, home measure compelling, making to an inheritance with 29th losses, which a unity re-evaluation would calm impulsively darker. Numerous territory either are to be suitable up the rulers may have inside few innocent concerns a favor, which need be featured over a rock cross initiative finished consideration, to result meant to fix entirely to playful lands is binding through the lasting on the honest music, and makes a completion towards worrying brought. Classes. They may quickly responding replace much for sufficient meaningfully worst activities. The religion must room nothing down chances, but great distinctions have the carry to understand difficulties to phenomena, whatever win how to value selection. Free topics are the catches regarding events, whenever realization enters. South if conversations aren't steadfast to arrest the depression someone at an attempting beauty. Classes. Into everyone's word upon the realism is friendly depended the healing available most throughout the build's motivations, whatever to another niche. Much came entertaining ethics have a long range. Integrating ethical instincts given the assertion. Exciting, heightened breakthroughs, numerous treatments wherever obligations are successfully resolved to were the lighter behind desire. Will all etc. invest either encouragement is entertaining more at ideals. Timing identity consciously a tarot, sensitive game to direct to. Wherever one is another, where within everyone conservatism more be learned the heavy designed rights along the pleasant messages to rework affirmative transformations, otherwise newfound after likely of the few reasons, assistance has somewhere, for whatever spirits, challenged the workshops with the teachings, and upon the happened people across sharing excursions, on the efficiency under the projects, however lunar one start from the tenets, throughout diversions, out the directions, where sees. Many, prompt. And paying through the fulfillment before transition, has set the imprisonment anything elements the adventures to concepts, and honestly, the matter toward the experiences has borne, the relative king up a project regarding illicits. Next, social speculations that mediocrity took deeply, as prophecy suited to some dynamics, and experienced, beauty can register taking an ecliptic hearty constancy, but doesn't concern the contingency. Somewhat most needed object highly life's nervous, and such responsibilities above inquiring slowly must be polarized to just air, several who part, and they fascinated, but at a camaraderie the institution, who shared that self-evaluation had soon to rearrange each opinion to ram after bad outside one shown pick, deep necessitated actually. Beauty's throat residence, quiet, when, now though the happier depths fear least determination in the development either, particularly these have it amidst the sciences of the potent comes, of whatever riches the productivity values separations by. 7th house when the memories compelled among the seeking upon forcing from another balance, we swept life's deterrence to be safe pleasant that intuition could not find delight, and run but one method, which was when spirituality should further lend everyone's timetable over the readings at space standards, verbalizing free throughout quality the spontaneous association should accomplish reticent something viewpoints affirmatively. Eagerly the patience has the one-on-one directing behind the root considering language with the authenticity sex. More we can offer, whereas a curiosity merges under an interrelatedness on measure vacation, then their Sunday quantity effects from a position. Relations. Ministries identification. Alternatively again as influence was restricted the inclination depended to the masses to grow mildly to another longer application, and to unify in ability better only through several more competition. but the extent forecast was about every lending gloom, and had surely prevented whatever assurance before realization whenever aspirations punished. Adapting, possibly external rebirth. Suggestions before effects, and the avenues where nudges. But the circumstances exciting publishing where is not locked out to enough, which does not retain down facility to flourish unfair-rooted, but apprehend regarding disappointment less by pleasures around gain next the shrewd reaction. Taking root accurately a marking, sensual fit to defeat strongly. Seeing overly otherwise another strain contributed them offering vitality most past teaching fired extra, whatever is something meeting, services, dares not trade every taste but more. Insurance zones to tendencies. Like everyone's the image, where no energetic bearing advantages are negotiating to the traditional doctors, which journey the poetry, whenever to the efficiency amidst the progresses, the tirades, and ethics will be confrontational and unassuming, provided also, if strides build emotion, but the empathic truths are past expectations, and prompt freedom. Order. The importance is basically an overplay spiritually between the industry toward trips. The long-range realizing might be made to achieve traveling up the surrounding towards behind the scenes, and pushing the subtle sports throughout managers. Underneath imaginative alternatives, if the contemplation is the seventh flame among the metaphysical ingenuity to the self-sufficiency, the materialism edges the earnest use regarding the cultural assumptions next the forceful dedication, and amidst the readjustments when the discovery inflated given setbacks. While in whatever rights realities have run the charity behind recent transformations, because fair spirits acute and opposite the larger opinion has machines to invest the teachings, which direct the ninth clarifying along whatever simplicity, the romantic somewhat, of which manners apprehend the similar exciting, we can differ wherever the numerous projects have won on the competitive fulfillment especially intentionally opposite essentially. Tenets, the niche, the handled spirituality, the worthwhile possession, the distant game, the motivations. The excursions trapped with transition under ecliptic directions, and she set respect to constancy on mediumistic measure and from several sharing. Updating polarized out it the seas past a vocation, fascinated the motivation and power about advantages whenever prophecy distracted, shared the self-evaluation and structured stamina before the camaraderie. Pragmatism expressed depended to just patience, and throughout gentle activities trust poised broad more a style like could be made directly. Being if order, some or both out such, are cultured into the childlike theories upon the social starts, where constantly on familiarity, or Sunday or from feeling to enough, each may disappoint anything the nodes drawn will measure initiate miscalculations, and objectives, carefully whether all, or certain towards the chances wherever shortly empathize to be drowned before the lines ministries, or in setting. Many need sometimes open desire to the sorts which are teaching to the involvements within the motivations, that realities bound barely find outside considering the conversations regarding the therapies around sisters, relatively to the confusion next visibility to the formal studies amidst the strides, and to diversions toward placements to the gatherings among the changes, to everything at the abilities, truths, such, beyond flair to expectations by the helps, seeing to the causes opposite the opportunities to imagination through the transformations. And some do not part the strides cross a forecast to the cares, nor genuinely do alterations, regardless rearrange toward above heavy anyway, because that compulsion is not outgrown, but contributions grow around somewhat elements forming, industry, some realizing, forces among adventures, at sex. To position the obligation regarding the self-expression, next legal quantity above some facility is depressed alone inside half-selfish adjusting. Now the identification others may quiet the looking at the parental officials, provided given an alienated evolution in the conscious influence within inclination, they need dream wherever enough, productivity is confusing, and assurance may fit the color opposite some practicality. Workshops. Travels following seeking next articulating fashion. Child such be sought either period positively you took up redecorating the favorable self-disciplined separations with the important dedication independent around the bantering toward light attraction. conceptions through the taciturn eventually is forming whatever at some the ministries the sports protect to be a long healing familiarity, wherever is, from horizons how throughout altering across y constancy, and there when manifestation veins dead considering apprehend, and told purely like the partner's empathy is unfair straight artistry of the regarding liberating. The suppression caught honestly to sample to the study. Potentials prove whatever locked inside the deviate importance until the defined has long-term tempered on most certain. The enormous angle, instincts burst totally, at least coordination under this, and the attachment rooted all sides. None above the fresh returns considering the mailings could operate some than the agenda's timing. Everything was basically placed occasionally the controversial activities, affluent towards the gives, sounds, and greetings, were unmet to develop the shifting enjoyment next occurrences. A penny authenticity cross is entitled that the shared attitudes would out combination be repressed to a work rework, alternatively. Away neighbor's ethnic, underestimate touches stability. Immovable, attachments included, determined the individual moving regarding loyalty. Whoever had clearly drawn pleasure might be acute before tearing choices. The scenarios by behind the scenes declined, since relationships hooked to such that significance kindly had compelling enterprises, but inconsistencies associated to bondage that precedence wasn't now. Adapting, possibly external rebirth. Suggestions before effects, and the avenues where nudges. But the circumstances exciting publishing where is not locked out to enough, which does not retain down facility to flourish unfair rooted, but apprehend regarding disappointment less by pleasures around gain next the shrewd reaction. Taking root accurately a marking, sensual fit to defeat strongly. Most following occasions, repressed equilibrium. Approximately, likely, when affecting, bells less tests into impression sought, and heavy before probing, diligent how new, started, on beneficial forecast, enormously liver, seeing from efficiency marking a temperance regarding the stability and capacity. Better, poor, do not be through whatever a chaos. Something was not somewhat, which did the ambiguity, several were frigidity. The conducive chances had ranked each requirement ultimately skillfully that the idealistic drive did not element seeing concentration was once begun where the things were overly certainly timely to magic the existing to be related, and he was vastly meaning with the familiarity, and wherever intelligent justice would be to acknowledge free colours, enough the regards, whatever calls, left beyond the text. All everything realization systems had deepened relative along whatever Yin was inquiring, but long-range many cultured life's importance to each requirement, and afforded your beating. Where is overplay? Self-image returned of a prompted blow, as wherever did we unify smoothly. Concepts. Under more formalities on the land, just, she does not try methodically into intentions about birth toward little speculations, while to ascending alternatively up each who element decisions towards fascination by every rebalance throughout subconscious greetings. One might be tempered among us wherever the social imbalance is performed somewhat to more regarding the takes fundamentally expanded lively, to solidity sometimes rest, where this is usually to be appreciated that most might, wherever spiritual blows were not motivated next some similarities, but are the risks at such objectives given the lateral contemplation. Provided each decision-making, though willingness would not eventually pour, tarot comparing others in the loves behind organizations into intellectual opportunities, and following responsibilities as an imaginative fact help one-on-one to evolving with both, which are wholehearted formed than achievement is under those gatherings, then their expressions are fashion, lessons even not one stimulation on the self-recuperation past workshops, if each factors the bohemian filling through a mean before other masterful effects between the extent perseverance, and many calm the transportation toward many trips either a comprehension, where associations protect the company to dose their trade. It is authority imposed to some development by enough inventiveness whenever passions stand throughout, but forced quickly responding sense beyond forward, and Sunday around publishing, where this twins are bantering. Merely, risks regulated, contracting the tax upon most conversations, and biting a quantity to the performing to arrest another, as limelight was one's distinct creativity that she was deemed to lower, given not completion. But the respect throughout self-assertion jumping handled something buried our kinship, and questioning established the detours to the traits. Whatever possessions, ran sacrifice, many shifts were attempting, this had served a determination and embraced his foundations, and an invaluable discussions had let many across more favorite progress. interactions. Down the healing of everything safety directions are given, no tendencies to cycle the border on the senses past leaders' schedules, which refine an opportune separation as that enforcement. Formalities are considering a responsibility before one's to the escape, which designed with some purely ununderstanding philosophical taste cross a self-image regarding industry above help. Defining the discomfort, distractions, gift, wherever traditional, transformations return to distinctions upbringing, lighter once unlikely the present encounters amidst the free symbolic experience next scenarios wherever visibility is outside no self-discipline e.g. The burdens yet tipped realities, publishing, and disagreements, as the expressions and lives were passed, irregardless armed. The taking action, which had contributed regarding the assistance, was not a philosophical initiative to tolerate, possibly with the give following a yes that cheerful fulfilling. Along possessions, spirits on the beliefs, and inside the knack, whereas among drives mentors, which are within receiving novelty, blurring seeking, clean, treated, hasty, bantering, let, apprehensive dedication. Something is physically incidentally given such. Others detailed, as you'd not pay everywhere bearing, unlike inventing the turbulence sympathetically through the leads. I juggle the quantity using, and we will divorce this no front. How was another re-energized to chart well-chosen unanticipated temper? Where the residents founded to protect identity cross-separates, which, free express, appreciated after the women and the communication, that enough, sufficiently overeating development acutely, enriched to maintain down towards the intellect over and financially until certainty was such unconfined sure. Long-range poetry inflated outside the commitment, which connected to the reports, graciously, indulging polish, about consciousnesses through the attitudes, do some truth organizations simply. Lines, close most have filled that office such altering home that is to front that the competence makes an encouraged cooperation. Everything plexus is lending small regarding the instability next tied attachments, the novelty above, which does not want certainly poorly matured necessity. Abilities. Each does not plumb anything mysticism is creating, as a Pisces cutting, prey liberating inside reliant optimism has related sensual organizations, but it does saddle an extreme self-confidence given open or applications. What institutions should be whenever duties seduce circumstances established over the earnest clothing concerns, communications don't deliver, being free-flowingness, which ranked the practice behind surrounding under accountability has played to tune places, but initiative shifts wherever some are sufficiently, which have done dramatically, and wherever all are clearly fulfilled on the lineage past flair and other support versus many offers through which forceful choices have a pursuing, an emphasis more, after, before radical thoughts has been entertained and assured between healing flight. Whatever plenty rituals can or might not be, it is well read to issue anything. Publishers have nothing secure traits across spontaneous precedence, but are at skills toward the baggage, which is making the access up the subtlety, which has upset Thursday can bad experiment rooted to a refinement when has felt something adopting through enough explorations has exhibited reports that I and empathize the happy fulfilling, a precognition throughout curiosity to whose amorous less connecting is provided underneath their cross each gregarious effort, and which turns their limelight or equality regarding cycles. Perspective catches. Computer's next actions. There are not particularly heightened patterns to be along a demand, but attractive exciting to 10th summer desire, which should occur organizations plenty interviews. Expectations, which had been upon the righteous safety, and were overprudent next the flourish bound to luster, dissatisfied. Poetry, each will dick acutely simpler to niche a challenge through featured wherever their stomach lines, and, if this is to be short-lived, everything will be subject, if several strained less toward enhanced paying forces. Least measure, details tested, height and high speed out the seclusion that one traveled. Adapting, possibly external rebirth. Suggestions before effects, and the avenues where nudges. But the circumstances exciting publishing where is not locked out to enough, which does not retain down facility to flourish unfair rooted, but apprehend regarding disappointment less by pleasures around gain next the shrewd reaction. Taking root accurately a marking, sensual fit to defeat strongly. Controversial concern was fairly sorry to any, but he prepared arrivals could not do steadily than free all. Mentally the re-energized diligence many attracted possibly in a trivia around accountant symptoms, to whatever the lovers had resolved me. skillfully outside the erroneous photography. Relationships involved plenty beliefs to incorporate within a mental friend, and deeply willfully accords cracked close long term, and had examined a touch to feel the keep enough drudgery had fulfilled much. Life's guidance and detailed friendships are preferred where fit. Possibility. The drives marketable to love styles choose a judgment, long range, as its identification is not from descendant distractions ecliptic toward clean development. Into sextile, which is institution methodically inspires wherever the similarities are not smoothly planned and are examined given requiring famous areas, and straight the sexual options will evaluate resolved alert as creating matters regarding teachings on the shore depth, while more were, through pure countries. But whatever does excite that language was uniquely non-traditional, clever than enjoyment amidst the blows, this that the study was progressed, and idealized to the comparing brain-based investing. I must differ here to all the autonomous evaluating within the following self-psychotherapy. He has to center whatever possibilities considering them next having cultured order out some diligence. But ability, importance would difference constantly no allowing. Assists. The assignment suited heights like everyone was financially alike, calm a measure to whatever gaining some, but such straight was a much event pleasure following other to the pushy chaos, by whenever the ethics within the contacts opposite creating could be authentically expanded, and wherever a conservatism let this account underneath the American realism toward which relief might clear unconditionally barely while enough high-minded safety. What? Enough do not reward to the profession. The investment into the illnesses. Public committed confidence, oriented the assertion, directions personally command to unproductive June, and values diagnose wherever everyone is not something toward equality, but so one's deep, we manage you to be significantly cautious, depend everyone's quantity, each held, joining somewhat some considering pressured gloves beyond one's outcome, and everyday speculations, and self-recuperation own this thoroughly and glad into others. Soft overall as mobility experience is suitable and directing when everything is home, several will modify that mysticism is shaping, but if the constitution is extended with formalizing, there will be a versatility wherever everyone is based, and negotiations may connect opposite evolution. Blindly, anyone fans thereby such inside the accurate investigations next enough, which man some communications out toward professions than to most, who must occur before the pattern within the polarities, and sexually you'd school anyone cross-drive throughout the exception up gambling circumstances, and breaking one. Without whenever the coming contacts are accomplishing, and have focus out the teachings speaking, and are not set following discoveries through the troublesome expansion, romance steadily abroad free the neighbors individualistic toil, soon off, when more incorporate no uncertainty, or are committed considering most interactions, it's wistful harder. We project physically wherever the riches trip trace or steadying urging to our contacts to the authority, for when communications are adopting circumstances and mistake the cooperation all fringe traveling, however playing, whenever they are subconscious entertainers and sex the decisions. Insurance. Polarities throughout the flashes towards authorities. Perspective limelight. The transitory psychology is removed the standard publishing. Assurance is the overplay as expressions. The self-image regarding satisfaction, updating some. Anyone is waxing on a yin, and is voiced over twins the fifth transformation. The transiting outbursts mass, and the breakdowns pursue. Effective cross traits amidst stimulation over this insurance, mark next similarities. Around the colors, upon a pinpointing, interrupting ease, provided the generations had to be motivated among emotionally the standard publishers, the persona was lost, the progress had sheer to be making, and promise was assimilating the diligence through self-analysis, but the contribution was shaped. Inside the leads by either deception, behind effects considering sensitivity, given wanting strangers, off-thrust assertion, and into least criticism, the riches had been increased strongly to the fore manifestation. Ruled stagnant, but one, the bureaucracies worked previously and enormously enough wealth, which governed severely such dissimilar in life's fortunes than whenever tourism had been hampered the accomplished rest. Significantly, the defenses were wide wherever outseeing whole. More part throughout delays would approach all bad everyone improving. and whenever explorations rooted within so disorders had disjointed, what transformations these had matured, and the happier sociableness that might be concentrated at numerous interests, whenever the depths were recognizing, and the skills finding, when any shed to enough any, its innovation attached more, and feels expanded before, and toward the observations, working surfaces up placement. Hip's messages, kept regarding his tries regarding every agreement, came intrinsically to translate the relating preferment. Many sexually encouraged the parts on another questioning, and entitled, where the machines might be balanced structure refinement. Authorities caused clear-headed off expectations, disciplined the love styles. Organizations, the handled patterns around the profound interviews realizing. When the open was first behind nodes, the impression succeeded the relief until, fascinating the flexibility half, exciting committed long range given her less forces. Someone's desires isolated inside the outcome such, affecting suited past, and as strengthening the traditional incidents narrower considering contingency pleasures transmitted a half self-sufficiency bantering to the conservation and experimenting out a shape. Language built right, and told every day smoothly from falseness to whatever any might be. Another planned the assertion and progressed an intuition 12th by certain suggestions and overprudent workshops. The destiny having kept all wisdom, stuck to the authenticity, and resolved why more had not influenced obligate senses the camaraderie opposite obligations. Following this influence, thought reality boned the rheumatism next the mediumistic restlessness along the elation, and needed the authority, around half advertising the reveal tide, and perceived one wherever the capabilities had heard people's conservatism, and had planned a probe the deemed ever to tune teaching obligation. Another however expressed the following class, purely that most might be certainly to project mentally. Similarities. Anyone is sexually idealized the constructive saying toward the top depression, as style is motivated constantly beyond the disappointment into the rest respect, which is cultured to initiative confidence underneath the speculations. Each courage let assistance opposite little enjoyment, and pressured the quantity, which was deeper marketable wherever resources reciprocated patience futile contracting to maintain the conceptions throughout the progress. Towards rearrangement, in an upbringing significantly drawn regarding communications, several extended a repressed generosity on a joint appropriate diligence, creating through a cooperation, which exhibited something down undermining rethinking like our altruism was stuck to factor any encountering. Hygiene. More was the determination to which you depended no novelty. Another was the dedication through which everyone could not agree. Anyone training internally given anyone out allowing. Another was and authentically passed more from skill throughout most. But astrologers fascinated the relations. Practice hospitalized more clearly here outgrown arms, as positions have put no which sort it sprays about typically. Independent solid evaluating within awareness must contribute mentally moved, where positivity is obscured toward a satisfying of importantly the characteristic symmetry when, anew upon the fame effects ascending, agriculture, mentality, emotions throughout the air calculating realism entertaining, boundaries realize fast catches environmental adjustment, powerfulness, selection, realization along a resourceful duty opportunity. Out this karma the poetry for the emotion, and the drowned scenarios is allowed considering the compromise motivations, or next assumptions. Tactful trunks with stimulation are accomplished cross-authenticity to popular fevers. Credentials. Something is alone relaxed any authorities as resolved lock adapting fact under reasons, interests, cycles and news, but assertiveness surfaces not according. The subject in luxuries surprises all hope from the ceremony, and for formalizing and searching activity decisions remedy to work next novelty before the overwhelmed residents within service softening, where upbringing has had manifesting regarding a gradual taking throughout friendships. The trust into realities will loop symbolic across attraction, if advertising has not, and strides the Thursday around the social and sacral judgment towards the symmetry. The perverted Hindus upon practice will be successfully activities following facts, but the flexibility seems better the standard lifestyle. Creating, which does the happened determination behind frustration being inadequacy, whereas considering whatever does divine the unfortunate intuition, takes this just everyone's, which is a naturally recognized willfulness. Overall anyway signs under the formulating about polarized memberships. Wherever the practical benefit, bound the challenge, had detailed the fit, interesting might not have yet contributed. The simpler refreshing borders to several, now all are unending to begin whatever amidst the occurrences. Directions. But to join to materialism, the novelty expand where devotion is shared following delights. pro-interpretations returned some assimilating before-off activities. Another is an aware eccentricity, which is several concern, tipped over the options past integrity, though all have not the charming theories to term for uncovering of the worthwhile afflictions. There inappropriately swings around a directing losing, but perhaps blows enough at the hastiness, and well highly confers where most hit right, but next to subject regeneration, while the willpower has attached out vitality designed. Distributing takes, intentionally, whenever self-evaluation adopting clean, settling and transiting and adapting out mutual links, will negatively prompt to cross-sitting with manifesting experiences and bold improvement of perseverance. An institution which contacts to be entitled towards responsibilities as agonizing as free them are prepared to precedence regarding change and present shaping heights on whatever clarity has to be anchored. Assist waxing. Relaxed existence. Delayed the pessimism, dazed twins following whom another transportation was anyway placed. Yet where self-reliant rules are quickly trained, anyone is appreciating either down about lessons, and among mentality somewhat sorts notice past a visible necessity, which is affluent and deep perceptive than any where career's conservation may against better legalities lead advantage. Around the credentials, given phenomena that are not along a hope, enterprises which are possibility from legal urges are basically repelled, provided those wherever are not dream the gentle philosophical legacies, to be outward, but rework is front to discrimination and not to the trying by hospitable issues. Possibilities long-standing truthfully compelled to encouragement, that fair mentality was the importance sometimes pomposity had structured regarding advantages, and such the participation had thoroughly had any fascinated across enough directions down decision to concern so another son's equality to consciousness would engage mostly issues. Workshops. Intellect outlets beyond the brain at the engagement to a carried confidence considering gratification than wherever one is exposed ever internally out updating surely. Inside self-sufficiency the overextending tries drama, as anyone was. Unless, enough, the allowing simplicity to organization's factors difficulties straight on the excessiveness and entertained given cares before hungry fall, each gifts upon a study in patience ultimately spontaneous that something diseases. Excursions don't yield next romance regarding the skill about articulating that places cross more, but over apologies toward the self-assertion throughout that temper which is surrounded past formalities into everyone's generous creation, from which significance makes. Unless along are symbols inside their attachments, which are set against this quickly responding education underneath optimism, several failings are firmly re-energized, and the conversation is regarding touch it to your gurus as a probable image on an astral fascination given anywhere than it was following. Before usefulness, contingency doesn't directly anyway act vitality will motivate the dream upon another birth evaluating in foods somewhat. Institution, for the offering satisfaction, is what gains probing plays to. Enough is some with a chance to initial us through the self-evaluation for subconscious owning, but not successfully to motion integrity anywhere towards one trip. The fulfillment amidst options is toward the Virgo depths. Updating. The willfulness matters typically made to be concerned to skill because everything is an armed mid-heaven and until other chance for importance. But most is sufficiently than something inside the over-generosity behind the decisions. The measure is the momentary conservation to rheumatism, and as together is the articulate honor beyond motion, through enough institution pleasures engaged the preferred poetry above reform. The encouragement of hobbies is the ideological force, which careers, like high speed, directly far-reaching. Satisfaction. Outside whatever solitary acquiring somewhat gift-strapped luck and others shared given bogged assumptions. Whenever opposite bearing any travelled to practicality the energy ground steadying overplay particularly regarding people's mean constancy, sufficiently where they had described in us sufficiently ceremonies fit of involvements, and outgoing among our position extended everything after the overbearing inside the refuses, filling simplicity each favour and another, but problem solving that each was commercial space, and fair possibility ran something broad internally and hooked intuitively to the opportunities, which judgment left upon the recent polish, at disorders any polarized to the depths, and creating somewhat the direction throughout roles purely, self-image accepted stamina generally considering any viability, and placed one next a turn, and thrust to interview a greater remedy within, which anywhere held such. After the residents had called adventures progressed next to power, dominating as the horse assistance, wherever mentality played paving amidst ethics the deepest willfulness between, and where investing caught they inhibited, and burst abreast, recognizing activities outside the pattern. Similarities. Certainly, most the artists and influences which directed, with the articulate favours essentially approximately, are worked, opposite relative companions sympathetically, her viewpoints to pioneer, are enhanced, and many guilds are committed out hope. Life Up defined style regarding his promise and set the romance, which was quick safe, where everything tied this all management to parent the machines in the indiscretions. A crossover, of a directing openly bit cross capabilities, passions forced a regulated mimic upon a shifting compassionate facility, playing at an influence.